Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlos here, and decided to use Druddigon, the discount Garchomp. And while that might sound like an unfair criticism, we can see it's pretty fair when we compare the stats. So Druddigon does have some good stats overall though. 120 on the attack means we do have a little bit of power behind this Pokemon, and 90 on the defenses means we're not going to be directly frail. So we get a good amount of takiness overall, durability, everything like that, and then 77 on the hit points. So a little bit above average on there, and then we have a bulky attacker Pokemon that's going to be pretty solid. But then we get to that speed. 48 speed means we're not even going to outspeed and wall break a lot of tanks. There still are going to be like the super slow tanks we can get around, but it's not going to be super reliable for that. So things to consider. Looking at its typing, pure dragon type. Wow, we actually get 2 pure dragon type Pokemon when it comes to the 5th generation, and it's an interesting typing to break down. Ice, dragon, and fairy weaknesses, and then we get the elemental resistances. Fire, water, grass, and electric. And these are just the things to consider. You know, if you see ice or dragon threatening you and fairy, just try not to deal with it unless you're looking to be very specialized against that. And at least with the pure dragon typing, we're not like round dragon or flying dragon, so ice doesn't immediately mean death to us, which is a very good thing. Hopping into Pokemon Showdown, Druddigon is actually very, very complex because there are so many specific little matchups that Druddigon can play around with and actually find a lot of success. So let's look at Mega Mawile. Mega Mawile wants to run the hit points, it wants to run max attack, and very little speed because it has Sucker Punch. So it gets a lot of Mach priority, and it's also going to be able to take a hit and explode any Pokemon in its way. Druddigon, with the right amount of speed investment, can outspeed and then only trade with the rough skin. So we can also look at Druddigon's abilities. Really, really good abilities across the board. Sheer Force, that's bonus damage and potential Life Orb negation. And then we also have Mold Breaker, which makes it to where Levitate Pokemon eat our Earthquakes. So we do get good trades, but then Rough Skin. Rough Skin works out really well against physical Pokemon because as this bulky attacker, it's going to be you take a hit and then you dish a hit back. But Druddigon's case, Mawile, we actually outspeed it with a little bit of speed investment. Now Mawile is hugely tanky. That with the 125 on the defense and max hit point investment, it's not going to get knocked out by our choice banded Fire Punch. However, Earthquake will. So with the Rough Skin and then Earthquake, we're going to have enough damage to knock it out. And we'll talk about Sucker Punch here in a bit, but with the reason why we'll have Fire Punch is that we can also use that for Ferrothorn. We can easily two-shot a Ferrothorn, and it doesn't really have much to respond back to us with, which is actually going to be really nice because we don't have a lot of speed, so Gyro Ball doesn't do anything. And if it gets a Leech Seed on us, well, we just two-shot with a Fire Punch and then switch out. So we can make use of this. And that's why we also don't need the Sheer Force necessarily, because Fire Punch, it doesn't give us too much more damage. Like, I think we'll actually be able to one-hit KO instead, but Ferrothorn doesn't threaten us anyways, and we can Rough Skin the Mawile, so you can trade 1-to-1 because you're not going to survive its Play Rough either. Now, if it misses Play Rough, then cool things happen, or if it doesn't go for Play Rough, that could be a very beneficial thing for you. That they think, I just brought my Mawile against a Druddigon. There's no way they're staying in, so they go and throw out some kind of other move, and then you just go and pick up a KO back-to-back or something. The Sucker Punch trade might get interesting. I didn't run damage calculations on it, but overall that shows the idea of Druddigon, that you're either going to be able to trade heavily while being slow, because this choice banded Stab Outrage with a 120 attack, very few Pokemon are going to survive it. The only one that really does is going to be Mega Kangaskhan, but even then, Mega Kangaskhan can't KO you if it's using Return, and then Outrage does like 90%, and then the Rough Skin damage is going to be enough to knock it out. So you can actually trade a Kangaskhan with the set, then switch out, come in for like Sucker Punch damage later. So you can actually trade a Kangaskhan with the set, and even if it's running Double Edge, I think it's like a 50-50 that it might do enough damage to knock you out. Then you can even use Outrage, and then pick him up, and then still be on the field alive, and not really well, because now you're locked in the Outrage, so you can't really do much else except for go down. And that's going to be another problem with Druddigon. That Outrage Choice Band is very powerful, but we also get access to Sucker Punch. Now here's the thing about Sucker Punch. If you want it for Dark type coverage, it's really good, but any of these moves right here, they're not really going to work when it comes to Outrage. The idea behind Outrage is that if you have max hit point investment, you're roughly a 3-hit KO. Hopefully a 3-hit KO in a lot of situations. That way you take a hit, KO them, take a hit, KO them, take a hit, get KO'd. Well, you 2-for-1 with that choice band, and you don't have to worry about it anyways. Now, the only other thing that you can do is like come in with a Fire Punch, maybe Gunk Shot. So go in for those specific matchups, switch out, then you have the Sucker Punch later, because then you can come in, clean up Pokemon with Sucker Punch, and maybe in the late game, if they have 2 Pokemon that are low and you're already low from something else as well, might be able to just choice ban the Sucker Punch and cheese out a victory that way, but there's a lot of matchups that could go either way. But on the choice ban set, it makes sense for Outrage, but not so much on the Sucker Punch. It can find those opportunities, but you still get a lot of other moves. You can use Earthquake, but again, that's going to be more for the Mold Breaker ability. There's just all sorts of things you can put here. Really good coverage overall, and then we can go and look at the other things that Druddigon does get access to. Life Orb Sheer Force. Now, Life Orb Sheer Force is also going to be interesting because you want to run the same set. You need that Outrage, you want the absurd amounts of damage, and then you just want to find as many one-hit KOs as possible. But with Sheer Force, Gunk Shot is going to get boosted damage, and Fire Punch is going to get boosted damage. Now, Sucker Punch is still going to be a bit of an issue because you might be Outrage locked unless you go like Gunk Shot or Fire Punch into the Sucker Punch, and that's going to be like pretty niche. But Druddigon does get that priority with its low speed, so it's like, it feels like a necessity, but you might not find that many opportunities to use it, but it might save you a game here and there, especially, you know, if you find an opportunity to switch out Druddigon, bring it in priority, and then victory or something like that. Now, the interesting thing about Sheer Force is that when a move is being negated, or when the second effect is being negated and the move is being boosted, Life Orb also loses its recoil. So if you're using Sucker Punch, taking recoil, Outrage or taking recoil, but Gunk Shot, Fire Punch, or anything else, like Crunch will get a nice Sheer Force boost, and you can run that instead of the Sucker Punch. But, you know, it's just one of those weird situations. You know, if you're locking yourself with Outrage, it's going to reduce your options. So the Life Orb switching doesn't really matter, which is why we go back to the Choice Band. Choice Band, you lock yourself in Outrage, you know what you're committing to, and the coverage is just like those little rare situations. You're not relying on the coverage, you're relying on that Outrage more than anything. And then you also have the Gunk Shot, so if they bring a Fairy, you can actually respond to it. Just a lot of really interesting breakdowns with the Druddigon, but it shows the complexity of this Pokemon and how powerful it can be. In great scenarios, you know, it can get 3 KOs, it can find all sorts of really weird things to do. And then there's also Assault Vest. So Assault Vest with Sheer Force and Gunk Shot is going to be able to obliterate Sylveon, and then with the Assault Vest, you actually get to survive against some Sylveon sets, which is kind of interesting. So say we're going up against a Cleric set or some kind of crazy defensive set, we're going to be alright, but what if we throw in Modest into the mix and we go 2v2, 252? Here's where things start breaking down. So that's when we're at 76 to 91%. We're actually going to survive and get off a Gunk Shot if it's a hit point special attack invested, say with leftovers or something. But at the same time, we might not see the leftovers. We might go and we'll see that Life Orb. Life Orb means that they're going to one-hit KO us unless we go into like crazy amounts of special defense investment. Then we get to choice specs, it's a lost cause. So certain Sylveons will be destroyed by the Druddigon. However, we can kind of bet on one thing. Sylveon isn't going to speed invest. Like, there are some Scarf sets and then you're just kind of a lost cause anyway. But then that also gives us another breakdown for the Druddigon. Do we want to go with the Assault Vest for Sylveons? Because the other cool thing about Assault Vest is that against a Gardevoir, we can survive a Mega Gardevoir Hyper Voice and then one-shot it with a Gunk Shot. So if we're just using it for those stay-in situations, you know, oh, they switch out, you know, we try to use Outrage, they switch out into their Fairy type, and then we absorb them and Gunk Shot them and we trade their Fairy, and then Druddigon goes down, or it might transition to a Sucker Punch. Because this is another situation for Sucker Punch. So we get a 1-for-1 and a little bit more damage because of the Assault Vest. But at that rate, would we rather just take off some more hit point investment and go into speed investment? Which is why we also have Sylveon here. So say 4 points in speed, even though you might see defense or special defense, we need to outspeed 81 speed. So then we just go and we play around with the numbers a bit, and that is going to bring us to 82, which means now we're in another interesting situation. With this, we're not surviving a double edge from Mega Kangaskhan anymore, but with this, we're also going to be able to outspeed Sylveon, still survive a return, and also hyper trade with some speed invested on the Mega Mawile. So this is where Druddigon is like so complex and very difficult to deal with, that there's so many things that it can be good for that it really needs to specialize, which also splits up its power. That we could all focus its power in one area and make it good against everything, or we can find those specifics, kind of cancel out trades somewhere else, and really get into some really weird situations with the Druddigon. So then it can like Gunk Shot and still find ridiculous amounts of damage, or do we just want max out hit points, max out the attack, click that Outrage button on Choice Band, and call it good. And then we don't even talk about Mold Breaker, like with the Life Orb. You know, Life Orb Sheer Force is really good, but Life Orb Mold Breaker with the Earthquake is really good as well. That Rotom Wash doesn't get to do anything, Rotom Heat doesn't get to do anything to us. We just get to go and blow up these Pokemon. Gengar with Dazzling Gleam doesn't do anything to us, but we can also Sucker Punch it. So that kind of takes away the need for Sheer Force, Earthquake, but other Levitate Pokemon, you're all over the place when it comes down to the breakdowns of Druddigon, and that's why you just kind of have to pick and choose and hope for the best. There's no real better set. As we've shown, each thing works differently against other ones, but there is one very consistent set, and that's going to be Stealth Rock setup or Rest Talk setup on a full tank Druddigon, and we'll talk about this. So what if we have Stealth Rocks? Stealth Rocks actually works out really nice, but with that we're going to want the Chesto Berry, and then we just set up Glare and Dragon Tail. The idea behind this is you're becoming the ultimate phase setup Pokemon. So phasing is when you're using like Roar, Whirlwind, Dragon Tail to try to just shuffle through your opponent's team, make them lose any stat gains, make them take damage from Stealth Rock. Now with this, you're going Glare into Dragon Tail, which does lead to a lot of really interesting things. If you're using the Rest Talk set, you can actually Sleep Talk the Dragon Tail, outspeed your opponent, and entirely cancel out their turn. But if you're doing this setup, you're giving yourself the Stealth Rocks. So you lead Stealth Rocks, you use Glare, then you rest. Your Chesto Berry's going, like, you're going to heal up, then Chesto Berry comes in, then you can Dragon Tail Glare again if you're lucky, depending on the Pokemon coming in, and then you're going to be able to at least paralyze 2 opponents and break down some of their Pokemon by getting Stealth Rock damage. So that's something that you can do. Or you just run ultimate just annoyance right here. You go with the Rocky Helmet, and then you also run the Sleep Talk. So with Sleep Talk, you will need to bring your own entry hazards, but with a different Pokemon, and then you can just kind of Glare Dragon Tail, and the idea is just to annoy your opponent. If they don't one-shot you, then they're going to be in trouble. I think they need to like 2, maybe 3-shot you in some situations, but if you get that Glare into Dragon Tail, now you're going to just be paralyzing a lot of your opponent's team for free, and that could be absolutely devastating. As for the set, you can run some special defense investment, or you can just go full physical tank, pair with a special defense tank. That way you know, alright, special attacking Pokemon came in. It doesn't threaten me too much, so you throw out the Glare, and then you might like rest and then switch out or something. Or you know, even if you don't want to throw out the Glare, you're just switching your special defense tank, wait for a physical Pokemon, come to Druddigon, have that Rocky Helmet proc, and then you just kind of cycle through their team again until things happen. So that's how you use Druddigon. A lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of really crazy matchups that Druddigon can win because it does have a lot of power, but it is also going to be kind of restricted in some way. So if you guys enjoy the video, that's how you use Druddigon. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you for watching.